Welcome back to Nicki Woo Cozy Stories. I'm your host, Nicki. Tonight, we continue our cozy retelling of The Secret Garden. Episode 10, The Hidden Door Opens. Let's begin. Misselthwaite Manor stood alone upon the edge of the moor. The land around it stretched wide and open, rolling outward in long, uneven reaches of brown and muted green, broken here and there by stone and scrub and the faint winding of distant paths. There were no neighboring houses close by, no village sounds, no passing voices, only the quiet expanse of open country and the great sky above it. That afternoon, the light lay pale across the moor. The wind, which had been sharp in the days before, had quieted to something lower and less insistent, though the air still carried its chill. It moved now only in soft passes across the grasses, bending them gently and then letting them rise again, as though the land itself breathed slowly beneath it. The manor rose from the stillness, large and weathered, its stone walls darkened by time and seasons. Its many windows looked outward over the open land, some catching the faint light, others already dim within, as though the house did not take in the day all at once, but slowly, in pieces. Inside, the corridors had grown quiet again. The disturbance of the night before had passed, but not entirely. There remained a sense of it, lingering in the air, in the way voices were kept low, in the careful movements of those who went about their duties. Doors had been opened and closed more than usual. Footsteps had traveled more quickly than they did on ordinary days. And though the house had settled, it had not yet returned fully to itself. At the great entrance, a carriage had drawn up, not long before. Dr. Craven had come. He stepped down without delay and made his way inside, his manner brisk, his expression already set with a kind of weary expectation. He had been sent for in haste, as he always was when such disturbances occurred, and he had come prepared to find what he nearly always found: a shaken boy, a long day ahead, little real change. Mrs. Medlock met him as he entered. She came forward at once, her face composed, though there was something in it, something he could not immediately name, that caused him to pause just slightly before speaking. "Well," he said, shortly. "How is he this morning?" Mrs. Medlock did not answer at once. "You'll scarcely believe your eyes when you see him, sir," she said. There was no alarm in her voice, no agitation, but something steadier, something that didn't match the tone that he expected to hear. Dr. Craven gave a brief, impatient sound under his breath. "I have seen him in all states," he replied. "I do not think there is much left that could surprise me." But even as he spoke, he had already begun to move. He crossed the hall and turned toward the passage that led to the boys' rooms, his step quickening, just enough to show that, whether he believed it or not, he meant to see for himself, without delay. Behind him, Mrs. Medlock followed. Dr. Craven opened the door and stepped into the room. The expectation had already settled in him. He had come to find disorder. He had come to find the boy worn out from the night, weak, fretful, lying among pillows with that strained look he knew too well. Instead, he stopped just inside the threshold. The curtains had been drawn back. Afternoon light lay clear across the room, resting on the rug and climbing softly along the side of the sofa where Colin sat upright, wrapped in his dressing gown. The window stood open. The air moved lightly through the room, cool, fresh, carrying something of the moor with it. Colin wasn't alone. Mary stood near the window. For a moment, no one spoke. Dr. Craven didn't step forward at once. He looked at the boy, at the color in his face, at the way he sat, not sunk into the cushions, but held upright and awake.
"Well," he said at last, "this is a change."
Colin met his eyes. "Yes," he said. "I'm better." His voice was steady. Dr. Craven moved a little farther into the room.
"You must take care, boy. You're not strong."
Colin's hand rested against the edge of the sofa. "I shall go outside." The words came simply, without hesitation, and Dr. Craven paused.
"Outside?"
"Yes." Colin didn't look away. "I shall have fresh air." The curtains stirred faintly. The light didn't shift.
"You have not cared for it before," Dr. Craven said.
"I don't like it when I am alone," Colin answered. Mary didn't move, but the air from the window lifted a loose strand of her hair. "And now I shall not be alone," Colin added. Dr. Craven's gaze moved toward her, only briefly. Then he returned.
"And who will attend with you?"
"My cousin." Colin spoke plainly. "She knows how to take care of me." There was a small pause. "And Dickon will come." The name settled quietly into the room. Dr. Craven's brow drew slightly together.
"Dickon?"
"Yes." Colin's voice didn't waver. "He knows everything about such things." The room felt different now, less closed, as though something had already shifted. Dr. Craven said nothing for a moment. Then,
"You mustn't excite yourself."
"I am not excited," Colin answered. He sat a little straighter. "I'm going to get well." The words were quiet, but certain. Dr. Craven looked at him for a long moment. Something in his expression did not quite settle. Something he had expected to find wasn't there, and something else had taken its place. Dr. Craven didn't sit down at once. He stood beside the chair, looking at Colin. The room was not as it had been before. The window stood open now, and the air that moved through was cool and clean. It carried with it the faint scent of the moor, something wide and distant and alive. The curtains lifted and settled again. Light had found its way in. It rested softly across the floor, across the sofa, across the open pages of the garden book beside Colin's hand. For a moment, no one spoke.
"You must not tire yourself,"
the doctor said at last. His voice sounded quieter than it had the night before. Colin didn't lie back. "I am not tired." He sat upright, his shoulders no longer drawn in, his face clearer now in the morning light. Dr. Craven watched him carefully.
"You were very ill last night."
"I was frightened," Colin answered. The words came more easily now. "And when I'm frightened, I feel it everywhere." He moved his hand faintly against his arm, as though remembering. "I think of it, and then I cannot stop thinking." The air stirred again. Mary stood near the window. A strand of her hair moved lightly against her cheek, but she didn't lift her hand to push it away. She was watching Colin.
"And now?"
Dr. Craven asked. Colin shook his head. "I am not thinking of it now." There was a small pause. Then, "She makes me forget." He didn't look at Mary when he said it, but he didn't need to. Dr. Craven's eyes shifted toward her. She said nothing, but there was something steady in the way she stood, something that didn't move or change under his gaze. "That is not a cure." Colin leaned forward slightly. "I don't want a cure. I want to get well." The words were simple, but they settled firmly into the room. Outside, something moved faintly in the distance. The wind across the moor, low and wandering. Dr. Craven studied him. "You have said that before." "I did not mean it before," Colin's fingers rested against the edge of the open book. But I mean it now. The light shifted slightly as the cloud passed. Then returned again. I am going outside. Dr. Craven's brow drew faintly together. Outside? Yes. Colin's voice did not rise, but something in it held. I shall go into the garden. The word lingered. Garden. And it didn't feel like imagination now. It felt like something real. Mary's eyes lowered slightly, just for a moment, and when she looked up again, there was the smallest warmth in her expression.
And who will take you?
My cousin. Colin's voice softened just slightly. And Dickon. Again, something changed, not in the room, but in the feeling of it, as though the air itself had shifted. Dr. Craven gave out a low, slow breath.
I know the boy.
There was something quieter in his tone now.
He's a sensible lad.
Colin nodded. He's not afraid of anything. The curtains lifted again. The light remained. The room no longer felt closed. Dr. Craven looked from Colin to Mary and back again. Something had altered, not loudly, not completely, but enough that it could not be set aside. For a little while after Dr. Craven spoke, no one moved. The air from the open window passed softly through the room. The curtain lifted and fell again. Colin sat with the garden book open beside him. Mary stood near the window. Then she turned slightly toward him. Aye, she said. Thou'll go out. The words came differently, rounder, stronger. Colin blinked. What? Mary's eyes held his. Thou'll go out, she repeated, a little more easily now. And I'll see it all. For a moment, he only looked at her. Then, a small smile broke across his face. You're speaking differently. Yes. Mary didn't look uncertain. It is Yorkshire. She shifted her weight slightly, as though trying the words again. Thou art a Yorkshire lad thyself, she said. Born and bred. Colin gave a short laugh. I am not. Mary's expression didn't change. Thou art, she said again, more firmly, and thou doesn't know it. The air stirred lightly between them. Colin laughed again, this time more freely. It seemed to surprise him. What are you saying? I'm giving thee a bit of Yorkshire, Mary replied. I cannot do it as well as Martha or Dickon. Then there was the smallest pause. But thou'll understand. Colin leaned back slightly against his cushions. There was color in his face now. Say more. Mary hesitated only a moment, then. We'll get thee out, she said, and as soon as the weather's right, and we'll take thee off out to the garden. The words settled differently now. Not quiet, not distant, but near and real. Colin didn't answer at once, but the look in his face had changed again. Dr. Craven had been watching, and he hadn't interrupted. But now,
You are teaching him dialect?
He said. Mary turned toward him. I am learning it, she answered. As I learned in India. Dr. Craven regarded her.
And you think this is of use?
Mary didn't hesitate. Yes. There was no explanation, no apology, only certainty. Dr. Craven gave a faint, almost dismissive breath. Well, if it amuses you. It does amuse me, Mary replied. Her voice remained calm. But it makes him laugh. The room was still again. Only the curtains moved slightly in the open air. Colin was smiling. And though Dr. Craven didn't say it, he had seen it. The room had grown brighter since morning. The window stood open, and the air that moved through it carried the faint scent of the moor, cool and green and wide. The nurse stood near the table, setting out things for the day. Now and then she glanced towards the sofa. Colin was not lying down. He sat upright among the cushions, the coverlet drawn across his knees, his eyes clearer than they had been the day before. You may tell the servants. The nurse paused. Tell them what, sir? That a boy is coming to the house this morning. There was a small silence. And he will bring animals with him. The nurse blinked. Animals, sir. Yes. Colin didn't hesitate. A fox, a crow, 2 squirrels, and a lamb. The nurse gave a soft, uncertain cough. Yes, sir? They're not to be kept below in the servants' hall, Colin said. His voice remained even. They are to be brought here at once. Another pause. Yes, sir. And they are not to be frightened, he added. They are used to him. The nurse inclined her head again. Yes, sir. She turned back to her work, but more slowly now. Mary had gone to the window. She stood very still. The air brushed against her face as she listened. For a moment, nothing. Only the low movement of the wind across the moor. Then, call! The sound came sharp and clear, carried through the open air and straight to the window. Mary's head tilted. The crow, she said softly. Colin turned toward her. Then, bah! A small, wavering sound. Thin, new, almost uncertain of itself. Mary leaned forward slightly. That's the lamb. The sound came again. Softer this time. Nearer. Colin's hands tightened against the coverlid. Then another sound from the corridor. A step. Then another. Heavy, measured. Boots thick with mud striking the floor, then muffled as they met the rugs. Thud. A pause. A thud. Mary turned from the window. That's him, she said. The latch moved. The door opened. And Dickon stood there. For a moment, it felt as though the outside had stepped into the room. The air shifted. Something living, untamed and easy, came in with him. In his arms, the lamb rested, its small body pressed close and its head lifting as it gave another soft, searching bah. At his feet, the fox slipped in without a sound. The crow followed, its wings brushing once against the air before settling along the back of the chair. Colin stared. He had never seen anything like it. Dickon stepped forward as though he had always meant to come here. They'll not do thee harm. His voice was quiet. They know where they are. He came nearer. The lamb shifted again. It were hungry. I thought they might like to see it fed. Colin leaned back, just slightly. His breath caught. He didn't finish. Dickon knelt. Aye, he said gently. It's but a little one. He lowered the lamb. For a moment, Colin drew back. Fear flickered across his face. I cannot. But the lamb didn't struggle. It settled, warm and small, its weight resting lightly against him. A soft bah came again, and Colin froze. His hands hovered. Dickon's voice remained steady. It's only telling thee it's hungry. It will not hurt thee. Colin looked at him, then at the lamb. Then slowly, very slowly, he lowered his hand. His fingers touched the wool. Soft, warmer than he had expected. The lamb pressed faintly against him. Didn't pull away. Colin didn't move. And then his breath changed. And when he looked up, there was something in his face that hadn't been there before. Not fear, not illness. Something quieter than something new. The room no longer felt as it had before. It was not only the open window, though that alone had changed much. The air moved freely now, passing in and out as though it belonged there, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something green beyond the walls. The curtains lifted more often, the light stayed longer, and there was, at times, a quiet kind of movement in the room that had nothing to do with illness at all. It didn't happen all at once. After that afternoon, it began to happen each day. Dickon came, not as a visitor, but as though he had always meant to. And each time he came, the outside came with him. The crow called through the window before he reached the door, a sharp, familiar call. that carried through the room. Sometimes it came early, perched on the ledge as though waiting. The squirrels no longer kept their distance. They ran quick along the branches outside, then along the sill, and more than once they slipped into the room without hesitation. One morning, one darted across the arm of the sofa and paused near Colin's hand. He started. Then he held still. Very still. The creature's nose twitched. Then, just as quickly, it was gone again. Colin let out a breath he had not known he was holding. The lamb grew stronger each day. Its small voice, thin at first, became clearer. Bah! It would press close, nudging gently, as though asking to be noticed. At first, Colin stiffened at the touch. Then, slowly, he let his hand rest against its wool, soft, warm, and he didn't pull away. Dickon watched without interfering. "If thou lets it be," he said quietly, "it'll come when it chooses." And it did. He moved about the room easily, setting things right without seeming to do so. Once, he shifted a chair closer to the window. Another time, he opened a book and turned it so that the light fell better across the page. He did these things as though they were nothing, but the room felt easier for it. And Mary noticed. She said nothing. Sometimes she stood at the window, looking out across the moor, her hair stirring lightly by the breeze. Sometimes she sat close by, leaning forward as the great books were opened between them. There were many now, heavy books filled with gardens, paths, borders, beds of flowers drawn in careful lines. They turned the pages slowly. Dickon would point, naming things not as they were written, but as they were known. "That'll come first," he said. "Thou'll see that one soon enough." "And that?" Colin asked. "That one takes longer, but it comes." Colin listened, and he didn't argue, and he didn't complain, and he asked questions. And when he asked, it was because he wanted to know. Sometimes he forgot himself, and he would begin speaking without thinking, and go on longer than he meant to. Once, when the crow gave a sudden call from the window, he laughed, short and surprised. He stopped almost at once, as though he had done something he should not have, but no one corrected him. Dickon only glanced up, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Mary's eyes flickered toward him, and then away again. The window remained open, always. The air moved easily through the room. Days passed in this way, quietly, but not empty, and nothing in the room felt shut away anymore. The change did not go unnoticed. At first, it was only small things. A window left open longer than usual. A chair moved closer to the light. The sound of voices where there had only been quiet. But before long, it became something more. It was Colin who made it so. "Send them to me," he said one morning. The nurse paused. "Who, sir?" "The servants," he answered. "Whoever is nearest." There was a hesitation, but only a moment. "Yes, Master Colin." And they came. Not all at once, but enough to fill the doorway and stand just inside, uncertain of why they were being called. Colin didn't look uncertain. He sat upright, the coverlet drawn neatly across his knees, his hands resting still. Mary stood nearby. Dickon leaned lightly against the wall as though he had no part in it at all. "You will understand," Colin said, "that I am going out." There was a stir. No one spoke. "I shall not be followed," he continued. "Nor watched." The nurse shifted slightly. But Master Colin, I shall not be followed." Not louder, but he said it again, and firmer. There was a pause. Then, "Yes, sir. I shall go when I choose," he added, "and I shall go with them." He turned his head slightly, toward Mary, toward Dickon. They know what to do. There was another silence. Different this time. Less uncertain. Yes, sir. And you're not to trouble them, nor send anyone after us. The nurse inclined her head. Yes, Master Colin. And it was done, more easily than any of them had expected. When they had gone, the room felt quieter, but not as it once had. Mary looked at him. You spoke as if you were grown. I am growing, Colin answered. There was no sharpness in it, only certainty. Dickon gave a small nod. Aye, thou art. Colin turned toward the window. The air moved in softly. When shall we go? Soon. Not today, Dickon added. The wind's still sharp. Colin didn't argue. He looked from one to the other, then nodded. Very well, but we shall go. Mary's eyes lit. Yes, she said, we shall. And this time, no one doubted it. They didn't go, not the next day, nor the day after that. The wind had turned. It came strong against the moor, pressing against the house in long, steady breaths that rattled faintly at the windows and moved through the chimneys with a low, restless sound. It would not do, Dickon said. Not yet. Colin sat up as he listened. He didn't argue, but his hands tightened slightly when they rested. Mary watched him. It will pass, she said. He nodded. But he didn't look satisfied. The window remained open. Even with the wind, the air came in cooler now, sharper, carrying with it the smell of earth turned and waiting. Dickon came each day as before. The crows still called from the ledge. The squirrels came and went. The lamb, stronger now, moved more easily, no longer uncertain of its place. And still, they didn't go. Instead, they spoke of it, not idly, not as something imagined, but as something certain. They spoke of the path, not the main walk. That would be seen. There's a way around, Dickon said, crouching low as he traced it with his finger along the edge of the carpet. Though, where the ground dips a bit. Mary leaned closer. Yes, past the hedge. And then, along the wall, Colin said, following the line. Their voices lowered, not from fear, but from knowing. No one must see, Mary said. No one will, Colin answered. Dickon nodded once. Aye. They spoke too of the chair, how it would be moved, when, who would take hold. I shall walk some of it, Colin said once. Mary looked at him quickly. You must not try too much at first. I shall not, he said. But there was something in his voice that had not been there before. Not stubbornness, something steadier. Each day the plan grew clearer. Each day it came nearer. And yet they waited. Sometimes Colin would turn toward the window and listen. The wind moving across the moor carried a sound with it, wide and distant and full of space. He would sit very still when he heard it, as though he were already trying to place himself there. Soon, Mary would say, and this time he believed her. The next morning seemed to come earlier than it had the past few days, before the corridors had filled with sound, before doors had begun to open and close. There was already a quiet sense of movement. Mary was dressed and ready, her hair loosely gathered, her hands steady as she crossed the room and opened the window a little wider, testing the air as it moved in. It was cool, but gentle. There was no sharpness to it now, no resistance in the wind. She turned at once. It's time, she said. Colin was awake and waiting, not restless, but alert in a way that made him seem almost changed from the boy he had been only days before. Dickon stood near the door, as though he had always been there, his presence as steady and certain as the morning itself. Without wasted movement, the chair was brought forward, and Colin rose just enough to shift his weight and feel, if only for a moment, the ground beneath him before settling back again, his hands tightening slightly at the effort, but not with fear. Mary was beside him immediately. "Only a little," she said softly. "I know," he answered, and there was something firm in it, something that held. The door opened quietly, and the corridor beyond lay still and empty, the hush of the early morning holding everything in place. They moved at once, not hurriedly in a careless way, but with a quiet purpose that allowed no pause, the wheels of the chair passing softly over the rugs as they made their way down the passage and around the turn, avoiding the wider hall and keeping instead to the narrower way that led toward the outer door. Mary walked just ahead, certain of the path now, while Dickon followed close behind, guiding the chair with steady hands, and Colin sat upright with it, not leaning back, not shrinking, but holding himself as though the moment required it of him. No one spoke. There was no need. When they reached the door, Mary opened it without hesitation, and at once the air changed around them, widening, lifting, carrying it with it the faint scent of earth and leaves and something just beginning. They stepped outside. For a brief moment, the light seemed softer than expected, lying gently across the ground as the morning settled into itself, and the space beyond the walls opened wide and quiet around them. But Dickon didn't linger. "We've no time to stand," he said, low and steady, already moving as he took hold of the chair again. They crossed the grass quickly now, not along the open paths where they might have been seen, but keeping close to the hedge, where the branches cast shifting shadows that moved with them as they passed. The world felt larger here, less contained, and the sound of it, the distant birds, the faint stirring of the leaves, the open air itself, seemed to press in from every side. Colin drew in a deep breath and held it, as though he meant to keep it with him. Mary didn't look back. She knew exactly where she was going, along the wall, just as they had planned. Dickon pushed with steady strength, not rough, but swift, the wheels moving easily now over the ground as the wall rose beside them. "There," Mary said, her voice low but sure. Ahead of them, half hidden with the stone, was the door, small, unassuming, so easily missed that it might have been passed 100 times without notice. Colin leaned forward, his breath quickening now. "Is it?" "Yes," Mary said. She was already there. Her hand moved at once to the place where the key had been hidden, her fingers finding it without searching, as though it had always belonged to her. She fitted it into the lock. For a moment it held. Then, with a soft, certain turn, it gave. The door opened. Dickon did not hesitate. With one smooth, decisive motion, he pushed the chair forward through the narrow opening, the movement quick enough to carry them inside before there could be any pause, any looking back, any chance of being seen. And as they passed through, the door moved behind them and shut. And now the garden door shuts once more. Beyond the walls of Misselthwaite Manor, the early morning settles softly over the earth, and the wind moves gently across the Yorkshire moor. Near the hidden door, so long closed and nearly forgotten, the air rests still. The key has turned, the door has opened, and something that had waited in silence for many years has been found again. But what lies within, and what will awaken there, will keep for another evening. And when you return, we will step inside together. For now, the garden rests, the moor lies calm and open, and the morning light lingers softly on the ground. So let the quiet of the garden drift gently around you. Let the soft winds of the moor carry your thoughts far away, and allow the story to rest here for the night. Sleep now. You are safe. You are loved. You have been listening to Nicki Woo Cozy Stories, created by Nicole T. Woodard. May your dreams be gentle and your sleep Be deep.